Quick disclaimer on this video, this isn't something I ever expected to make a tutorial about. As such, all I can do is show you my own messy setup. And it's messy because I've got a number of scripts that I use to do things like restart Popper. There was some confusion on the forums with people having issues getting this game to display correctly, so I agreed to put this together to hopefully help explain how I managed to have it working in my case. Do not cry to me if you break something on this one. Back up your system first. Many thanks. Hi guys, welcome to the channel. In this video today, we're going to take a look at my current deployment of Demon's Tilt. Quick disclaimer on this, to get it launching and closing in a somewhat smooth way and also have the menus display correctly, I had to spend quite a good amount of time doing trial and error with third-party tools such as AutoHotKey. It still isn't perfect, but I've provided feedback to the developer on how they might give the VPIN crowd a smoother ride, be that in this game or in the sequel that's upcoming, which is called Tilt, which you can wishlist on Steam at this stage. I'll also say that there's a few minor annoyances in terms of navigating the menus if you don't have some kind of joystick or keyboard or mouse connected to your cabinet. This can be somewhat mitigated using AutoHotKey, and we'll come on to your options for doing so later. That being said, it is a fun game. In my opinion, it's worth the effort. Personally, I haven't had the opportunity to play it too much. I've just been busy with so many other things. It's kind of crazy how fast time has gone over the last couple of years. But I'm planning on getting into this a lot more in the future. And so much so that I've created a lighting scheme using Terry Red's excellent DOF Lights effects suite. So I'll also show you how to set that up as part of this guide. Okay, so I'm using AnyDesk here in order to remote control into my VPIN. You will want to have a physical keyboard or a mouse attached just while you're doing the setup to something like this, or to use AnyDesk or another remote viewer solution in order to change things like game options while you're going through this. So the setup I'm going to show you here also will allow us to have the menu visible in-game in the correct orientation on a pin cab. However, the trade-off to this is that on exiting the game, you'll need to restart Pinup Popper, which we will do by a script. When I set this game up, it was very soon after launch, and the developer has since then added additional modes for pin cab users to have the screens in landscape mode and still be able to play the game, which obviously how most of us have this set for compatibility with things like pin-up and visual pinball. This is the landscape view as opposed to a portrait view, which was all that was supported on launch. Still is the case that if you have it set like this and you use those options, the menu is still going to be in the wrong orientation, which did kind of, for me, look a bit janky. So I'm taking the extra step and using my original config still, which is to have the screen be flipped into portrait mode as we launch into the game, and then flip back out to landscape mode as we exit the game. Incidentally, I'm also, one of the reasons for me making this guide is I'm hearing on places like Facebook groups that some of you are having issues, such as they were saying the screen was flipping, which I've not seen personally. So basically what I'm getting at here is this method I show you is a bit of a more cumbersome approach, but it works. And so you can decide if you want to go through this approach I'm going to show you today, or to play with it yourself and try and get it set up in another way. There are various options that you have. So it's all going to depend on your own setup. So first things first, you just install the game via Steam as normal. You know, on the store page after you've purchased the game, just click install, but don't launch into it yet. We'll launch into it after we've configured our screens. The next thing is, in the pack that I sent you, you'll see one of the items is this multi-monitor tool, x64 folder. which you're going to want to copy to your C drive so that your paths are the same as mine if you're going to be using the same script as mine, just for ease. I've included my entire deployment in the archive as a sort of reference, but you can just as easily download the latest version, and I've left a link in the attached advice text file that I put in the folder. What this tool is essentially going to do is allow us to change the orientation of our screens back and forth using the command line. Or in other words, we'll have an AutoHotKey script when we launch the game, which will flip our main playfield screen into portrait mode for us to run the game. And then we'll have another profile as we come out to flip it back into landscape mode. You see, you've got one called portrait and one called default. So there's no installer for this multi-monitor tool. You just copy the folder in, it's portable. So you just copy this folder into the root of your C drive, and then you should have the paths the same as I'm showing you here. Just incidentally, while we're here, I'll quickly show you what a config looks like. So, you know, it's got all your monitors, how it's going to be, the orientations, things like that. But to generate it, you launch into the program, and you should see something like this on one of your screens. And you can see what's going on. You've got your 3 displays in my case. So this top one is my DMD, dot matrix display, which is set to screen 2 in Windows. I have it flipped 180 degrees because it's installed upside down. And you can see the resolution there and the refresh rate. That's my back glass display, display 3, which is what we're looking at now. And we've got my main playfield. What's nice is you can also see what's running on these. Just if you're curious, you could use this for other things as well, you know, and have a look at what's running in the background and the window real estate that it's taking up on all those things, which is interesting. So essentially, though, all we're going to use this for is to have a profile that flips the screen. So really all it is you're going to do is first, when you come into the program, and it is as you'd have it default for the cab, you're going to save this as your first profile. So without touching any settings, you're going to go to File, Save Monitors Configuration, and in the config subfolder, if you don't have one, create one. You're going to have one that's called pincade_default.cfg. Name it the same as me so that we're all compatible if you want to use my script later on. Pincade_default.cfg, and just click save on that. Once you've done that, you just need to set a mode that is going to be portrait view. So simply what it is right click on your playfield screen, your main playing field, primary monitor, set orientation, turn it to 90 degrees, and you can see back on my playfield screen, it's now in portrait mode. That's simply all we're going to do, and then File, Save Monitors Configuration, and save your portrait as pincade_portrait.cfg. Click save on that. That's basically all it is, and then this can be called, these various profiles can be called via the command line when we need them. So I'm just going to flip this back for now. You can see when it's loaded the config, we're back into standard landscape orientation. Cool, that's it for multi-monitor tool. Next prerequisite that I need to go over then, it's AutoHotKey. What AutoHotKey does is, its main function in life is to really rebind keys to other keys. But it allows scripting in Windows essentially, where we can write a script to do certain things that we want it to do, such as rebind keys, launch programs, that kind of thing, and then we can generate an exe file from that can be called from things like pinup popper. So basically what you're going to do is, now on my system I happen to be running version 1.1.30 because I still haven't updated yet. In prep for this tutorial, I did have a look, and we're now up to 1.1.36.02. So I've included both. You'll probably find just to install the latest version, but in case there was some kind of legacy issue, which I'm not expecting, I've included the version I happen to use as well. So what you'll do is you'll double click, you run through a setup as per usual, so next through it, and once you've got AutoHotKey installed, what you'll then have under the right click menu in Windows under New is New AutoHotKey Script. And you'll see the format for an AutoHotKey script is an AHK file. So if we right click and edit with Notepad++, what a AHK file looks like is you've got this sort of preamble here which is set up, and then you put your script that you want it to do in the space below. If we have a quick preview here of the Demon's Tilt close script, you can see what it's doing. I'm running this multi-monitor tool. It's then closing out a Demon's Tilt. And then it's doing this, which is a cleanup file for the HK itself. That's basically it for AutoHotKey. I will say as well, if you're getting this from the website instead of on these installers, there's a V1 and a V2 of AutoHotKey. You want to go for the latest version of V1. It's weird how they've done it, but V2, the functionality works in a slightly different way, and you don't have that context menu and things, so you want V1, the latest version, if you're downloading AutoHotKey. Also, last thing to say about this, if you have written a script and you want to make the exe file, all you do is right-click on your AHK file and then compile script, and you see what it's done. It's created a new exe file of the same name of the AHK file that you've got there, which is what you'll then call from say Pinup Popper. So that's AutoHotKey. In Pinup system then, so hopefully on your C drive you're running Popper and you've got this Pinup system folder, which is your Pinup system. What I've created in mine is a subfolder called Windows Game Launch. And this is where I'm storing all my scripts that I use for various games, and also links to various games for my arcade games in Windows. Got quite a lot here because I'm doing things like lighting commands and things for my buttons. But nevertheless, I've created this folder in the support files, which is again which is a Windows Game Launch folder with just the ones you'll need for Demon's Tilt. So what you'll do is you'll come and you'll copy this Windows Game Launch folder into your Pinup system folder, and then you should have it the same as mine. Make sure obviously paths are the same and paths are compatible. If for some reason your Pinup system folder isn't called Pinup System, then perhaps create another folder called Pinup System. Or what you'll then have to do is change all the scripts later to make the pathing compatible. But I think that's it for that. Okay, so getting into Pinup Popper and other things here. Rim Popper, if we go to emulators, I've set this up as an emulator. So emulator is called Demon's Tilt. Description: Demon's Tilt is an active emulator in the system. Games folder is that C Pinup System Windows Game Launch, because we're going to be launching a script rather than directly from the Steam itself. And the extension is exe because it's a compiled AutoHotKey script. Media, this can just be whatever you use, because you're going to be adding media from dragging and dropping into Pinup, and keeping both my DMD and my back glass display on. We'll quickly dip into the art because there's a slight bit of nuance with this as well. So in the Media Manager, filter emulator to Demon's Tilt, and this is what I've got. Originally under Backglass, what I had was a MP4 movie running instead of a JPEG. And what I found, for some reason when using my method, is that after the 1 minute or so video had completed, it would quit instead of looping, just for this game. So replacing it with a JPEG file mitigates that problem. You're welcome to try a video if you want, but for me that was something I needed to do to get this working, was to make sure I'm using an image file. Not sure if it's the same for the DMD or not. We've included the front-end files that I could find. So you just come and drag these in as normal, and then I've given you some choices here for the back glass in different ratios, including the movie that I made originally, and the various wheels that we could find have been included here as well. So that's it on the art front for that little caveat. Getting into the complexity here of the script. Now, I apologize, this is kind of spaghetti because we're going into how I launched into my cab and all these kinds of things. So some of this you might need to tweak, but I'm going to explain it as best I can. So launch setup, Demon's Tilt. What I've got is you need to start the script by making sure it's on the right drive and then changing to a directory. It's going to direct output because I'm first launching the DOF profile that I'm using. So if you're not using the lighting effects script that I provided here, which we'll get into at the end, you would delete this line here. Or in fact, both these lines here, direct output and the DOF MSG line launching the Demon's Tilt profile. Next thing it's doing is it's launching Hide Mouse, which is an AutoHotKey script that I found online, which there was an issue with the game with the mouse cursor was appearing over the top of the playfield, which of course is very annoying, right in the middle of the screen. So this is my fix for that. As soon as you start pressing inputs, it will hide the mouse. It's then creating its instance of Demon's Tilt that Pinup uses to know that it's time to exit out. And it's starting the full game name, which in our case is going to be Demon's Tilt Launch in the Windows Game Launch folder. So Demon's Tilt Launch is what it's eventually going to be calling, is this script. So when it calls that script, what that script is going to do, it's going to sleep for 2 seconds. It's then going to call our multi-monitor profile that we set up earlier. Our portrait one. So again, if your path's the same, you won't need to touch this. It's then going to sleep for another 2 seconds. It's then going to open the game itself. This last bit can be tweaked by you. So what I've got here is I've commented this out on my setup, but as I was saying earlier, in game it would be best for you to have an arcade stick and buttons like I have, or a keyboard or a mouse. If you want to use the menus to change the game mode. What this will do is, instead of that, if you uncomment these 2 lines, and by uncommenting I mean you delete the semicolon, which is the comment indicator in AutoHotKey. You delete these 2 semicolon lines, and what it will also do is allow your MagnaSave buttons to work, in addition as nudge and tilt, to work as up and down in the menu, which can have you change the game mode. The downside to this is that it seems to break DOF effects a little bit for the MagnaSave buttons. They don't really fire off properly. They will still work correctly if you use the nudge on the cab, but if you're using left control and right control, that will fail to work. But you might prefer that the menu working than having the full effects in the lighting. So that's an option that you can use. Option 2, which I have personally, is it's going to double up your MagnaSave buttons to also, they're going to send, instead of the MagnaSave left control and right control, they're going to send R and L. And R and L is what you would then bind in game for nudge left and right, which for me on my cab is how my controller board, my pin control board, sends the nudge keys for things like Pinball FX. So when I nudge my cab, not only is it doing its analog, but it's sending an R keystroke and an L keystroke for nudge left and right. This way I can use the nudge on the cab physically and have R and L send that way, but also I can use my MagnaSave buttons as nudge left and right, and so both things work at once. So that's that if you have the same kind of setup. I hope I explained that well. The next thing I have going on, which is also optional, and you can comment out any of these if you don't want these or delete the lines, but my one key, which is my start button, is going to send an Alt Tab. So Another issue we had is that after you've finished a game, you need to have an escape key to see the game menu, and binding it to a key for some reason wasn't working for me. But what does work to force an escape menu to appear for some reason is to Alt-Tab back in and out of the game. So this, after a lot of playing around, has been my hack-around fix for this. It will send an Alt-Tab, and I'll press this twice to Alt-Tab out and back into the game, and that will force an escape menu. If I didn't have this, what I would have to do previously is quit all the way out, go through the entire restart process, which it restarts the entirety of Popper in my case, and then back into the game just to have a second game, which was preventing me from playing it, honestly. I didn't want to do that more than once. So with this, at least, again, I can work around it by Alt-Tabbing out and Alt-Tabbing back in, and it's not pretty, but it's functional. So again, that's an option for you to have. So that's the launch script that it's being called by Popper. So it'll launch in, it'll switch your mode to portrait mode, you'll play the game, and when it's time to quit out, you'll press your normal exit button, and then Popper will launch the exit script. And again, this is where it gets a bit messy, and you might need to change this because this is just how I've had things set up from trial and error over the years. It's going to same as before, it's going to set a drive, it's going to change to a directory, which is our Windows Game Launch directory that we've created. It's going to kill the hide mouse workaround. It's going to kill the original launcher, which is still open because of our keys that we had set going. Our key rebinds. It's going to kill the game itself. And then it's going to launch our close script. And what the close script does is it sets our monitors back to default, closes the actual game itself, and then it runs this cleanup. AHK Panic is a cleanup script that I found on the AutoHotKey forums. And what AHK Panic does, it will kill any running AutoHotkeys that are going, and then it will kill itself as well, ideally. So that's AHK Panic. Once it's done that, it's going to go and do our pupreset.cmd, which is my solution for resetting the entire pinup Popper, which again has got confused by this point. So pup reset. Some of these are doubled up because I wasn't sure if uppercase and lowercase would work, so kind of can be deleted, but it's going to close all these things. DOF links. It's going to close any of these that are going, which is you don't need to worry about. But it won't matter if this is left in there. It's going to kill pinup menus. Again, this is for launch box, which I have as a separate mode, which you don't need to worry about. Big box, again, this launch box, LED blinky, you might not have that. Image panic, image viewer, these might not be applicable to you, but it doesn't matter that they're in here. It's then going to go to our Windows launch folder, and it's going to do a start pup. Stay with me here. Now, what start pup's going to do is going to start pinup Popper again, or it's going to call another script that starts pinup Popper again in my case. So, again, we're making sure that the processes are closed. Doesn't matter if there's some duplication here. It's just closing all the things, closing any command window that's still open, sleeping. And then this is my main startup script for my system. So this is the line you might need to tweak in some way, shape, or form, depending on how you run things in your system. I'll provide mine as well, but maybe it's different for you in some way, shape, or form. This is the main Windows startup folder. So if you navigate to this, if you can copy and paste this in Windows, and you can see I'm running, in my case, at startup, it runs AnyDesk, so I can remote view in. It's running my light guns, something I'm going to be changing later, and it's running this startup.exe. Now you'll note I don't have the AutoHotKey script next to startup.exe in this folder, and that's because it would run it twice in that case. So it's running this, and it's running this as an administrator. So you right-click, you go to Properties, change settings for all users, and then run this program as an administrator. Again, apologies for the complexity, but I've provided startup.ahk here, and so what that's doing for me is it's sleeping for a second, it's running a command that kills any Steam processes, which I'll show you that. So it's killing these Steam, it's making sure Steam is completely dead. For some reason I needed to, again, I've doubled up because of the case sensitive, but sometimes it just wants to be told twice. I don't know. There's no issue having duplication in, so I leave it in. Sleeping for a second, it's making sure it kills Steam this way. Any kind of persistence of Steam is then gone. It's then running DOF links and then running my Windows startup.bat. Sorry, quick edit there because that last line confused me as well. This run Windows startup.bat is what ships with Popper. So this is basically going to start the normal pin-up process after DOF links has run. And again, this is the startup script that I have that's run at Windows Startup. So this last part of the process, this restart of Popper, you might want to tweak for your own uses. I'm frankly not cleaning this up. I'm giving you this tutorial to use as I have it set up, but I've got it working and I ain't changing things now. So I agree it's a bit of a spaghetti code that's happened here. But yeah, you might want to adopt this startup.ahk method for your own system. Either what you do is copy this file into that that startup folder, that program data, Windows start menu, programs startup location, so that it runs every time Windows starts, or tweak it yourself, compile a script, and then do that, copy that into that location. Make sure again that if you're using this, you're running the program as administrator. Cool. So just to say it one more time, just to make sure it's 100% clear, if you want to try and follow this, copy this into that pinup system folder. This has got all these files that it's calling from my various scripts, which I've tweaked and played with over the years. Copy this exe into the startup folder or edit it yourself, and create your own version with right-click compile script and copy that into your startup folder. And this will be what runs as you start Windows every time. And it's gonna call these items. It's gonna make sure Steam is killed off first. It's gonna run Steam again, which I misspoke earlier. And then it's gonna run Popper, and then you'll be back into and DOF links, and it's gonna be back into a full reset essentially after you exit out of Demon's Tilt here. So for the game itself, under Game Manager, you're gonna add new games basically. Under Emulators, Demon's Tilt, scan for new games. Any exe file that's in that C pinup Windows Game Launch folder that we created. Now in my case it's quite a lot, because it's got these blinky commands and stuff, but any exe files it will see as a possible candidate, and the one you're adding is going to be, it's not on here because I've already added it, but it's going to be demons tilt launch.exe. So you select it, add game to the system. By adding the game to the system, it's then available in your media manager. And then, so the third thing you do is, after doing the script, after adding the game, you'll come and you'll drop your media in. And with that, I believe we're ready to test and configure the game itself. So here's a video I took of my cab. As you see, navigate through the menus. I've added it on a playlist called Pinball Lovers, and that's it showing with the front end art loading in, multi-monitor tool making things crazy, but game opens, does the launch DOF effects, And this is the main menu. What I'll show you first here is the game settings. So take a look at the game settings. I'm running in full screen mode, and we'll go over the key bindings real quick. So going over the controls here, and I'm actually going to start from bottom up in this screenshot. Instant reset of the game. I was playing with this. The developer confirmed that this only works when the escape menu is open. It doesn't work as a general thing. It might have been something that would have been useful for spin cab users to have that working 100% of the time. But he said that having it open, he was worried that people would accidentally press it. UI cancel button is bound to escape, but as I was saying earlier, that doesn't work. So I've had to use the Alt tab in Alt tab out method for my setup. UI select button, that's my coin button, which I've done for UI select. In my case, start, and the start button, number 1, wasn't working properly, so I bound it to coin, but that does work. UI vertical nav and plus and minus is up and down the menus, so up and down arrows either on your keyboard or, in my case, I've got a joystick which sends those commands, and same with left and right arrows. This again, if you uncommented that area of the script I mentioned earlier, to have the MagnaSaves double as up arrow and down arrow, that's what that will do. Nudge up plus space. Now these nudges, you've got an up plus, and an up minus. Basically, I found for gameplay reasons, I preferred having it on the strongest of the nudge, which was nudge up. These nudge up plus, excuse me. There's nudge up and nudge up minus, I believe, will nudge, but to a more subtle degree. So I've just put it on the most strongest setting for nudging, and you can obviously change this if you decide to do that. But space is hitting forward on my cab. That's only, in my case, sent by physically nudging the cab. And that's what my controller board sends as a space command, and that will do a DOF effect. I set these other keys right and left nudge by nudging the cab, and for some reason this is what the game reads it as, is shift left and shift R, shift L and shift R, excuse me. Not sure, something weird going on with case sensitivity here, but regardless, it works, so I leave it. That again, it's going to send from our script earlier when I press the MagnaSaves left and right, it's going to send L and R respectively. So either the MagnaSaves or this physical nudging of the cab will send the DOF command and will send the nudge to the game. Plunger return is launch ball. Hold that down to launch the ball. Start, I haven't found the use for that yet. I was binding it because I was playing with it. Ignore that. Left and right flipper are left and right flippers, which are your shift keys. And then in the video options, you've got tape vertical display. I have that enabled. Red X means it's enabled. Landscape and 180 I have disabled. And resolution I have set to auto, and full screen is enabled. So back in the game menu then, you can see you've got 3 different game modes. The EX mode is probably the most recommended one, as it has these extra modes and options and things that you can do. I'm just going to choose hardcore, as I only want 1 ball for this, so we can get in and out quite quickly. When it comes to selecting the EX mode as well, either you're going to need to have up and down enabled on your cab, or you're going to need to use Timo's script that will automatically select that mode when you launch into the game. You can see the effects here, nudging physically left and right on the cab, sending those nudge effects up and down, nudging it forward, and you're getting the one that sends it to the back glass, to the back matrix, excuse me, and pressing the R and L MagnaSave buttons is doing the same thing. Launch ball there, and the flippers are working, lights are working, happy days on that front. So I'm not going to show too much of this. I had another video that I showed the effects off after I made them. I'm just going to go and have a quick run through here and sync the ball. And in fact, what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the in-game settings, and these settings are accessible when you hit the escape key in-game. So quick as possible then, because notice is getting on in length. Comfort options, you can see I have the top 3 selected. This is all personal preference, these top bits. Multiple zoom, I have it set to, it's about sort of 70-85% on both multiple zoom and standard zoom to just enable the full width of the playfield to be seen. These visual options, they're not enabled. You'd see a red text next to them or red cross next to them if they were enabled. Color correction, I'm using filter A, which again there's I think 4 different versions of color correction that you can choose from. Screen overlay options, again you've got an RGB and a scan line effect, so you can use those. With restart game, now there's a little bit of a nuance here, which is useful to know about. If you're using only the up and down and don't have left and right flippers bound, commands bound, for example, if you're using the script option, if you want to get to restart game, you start scrolling down, it won't. It will go to defaults. But if you go to cancel and then back up a level, it'll land on restart game. So you can scroll all the way down to hit cancel, then go up one, and then that's how you can access restart game. Looking at the next one then, it's just an audio options. So the BGM I like is BGMA. You can choose from one, I think 4 different background musics. And then you can set your audio as you like it, your audio levels. And then lastly, under experimental, just so you've seen this, I think these are defaults. I've got forward focus enabled, parallax scrolling enabled, frame rate is unlocked, and that's pretty much it. Off these menus, you can get back to the main menu as well, but you'd need to have left and right bound to the to your controls. So you need a stick basically or a mouse. And again, because escape wasn't working for me to get into this menu anyway at the end of the game, what I did was Alt Tab in and out using that key bound that's set to my start button. So I think we'll see that in the video now. And then what we're going to see is the video. I'll show you the animation here as it's the scripts here as it goes back into Popper and as it resets. Bear in mind with these scripts, I've added 10 seconds here and 10 seconds there to make sure Steam starts up again properly and things. I tried it with shorter delays and it was giving me problems with Steam specifically, so it will take a few seconds to reset back into Popper, but it does so and it actually works. So just to finish things up here then, here on the cab, you got my DOF Links effects. So where this lives is you've got this folder here with the effects file in. You're going to need to have DOF Links already installed and it should just work, I believe, because it calls DOF MSG. And so on the C drive, you'll have a direct output folder. And then if you don't have one called Windows, which I think is a custom one I made, you make one called Windows. And then you drop this file in demonstiltlaunch.ini, which is the same name as the exe that we're calling in Popper to launch the game. And this contains the code that I made to have the various keys that I set trigger the effects. So again, you'd need to have the same key bindings as me or it won't work. But I've gone on my cab, I've got the standard visual pinball pinmame type key bindings, so they should be compatible with most of you. The other thing is Timo on the Facebook forums, he's posted some support files as well. He's got his own start script and also reshade if you've ever played with that. So he's got his own version here which doesn't do the screen flipping and things like mine. So that's his start script. He said his exit script is basic in terms of similar to Pinball FX, how it exits. So you could try that. But again, the menu won't be in the right orientation. He also, instead of, or as his solution of being able to select Game EX mode, he has this script which runs at the beginning. And so what this does, it waits for the game to load and it sends some down arrows, and then a command space and then some up arrows and a command space and some down arrows. So I think what he has got, and you need to search him out if you want clarification, but I think he is setting his UI select key as spacebar, whereas I was selecting mine as the coin button, which is 5. So another option there for you to have a look at if you so choose. You might want to, Again, it's up to you if you want to directly copy everything in and hope for the best. In my approach, it shouldn't break anything, I wouldn't have thought, but definitely have a backup in play. Or if you want to try your own setup and use these principles as a bit of a sort of forewarning, because I have spent a really long amount of time on trial and error getting this game to work with AutoHotKey. You know, I've had ideas and they haven't panned out, basically, of hacks and workarounds we can use. Anyway, this video's gone on long enough. Do enjoy your virtual pinball. Have a look at the sequel. The dev has already said that he's planning to make the sequel a lot more feature-rich, which we can hope for. And hopefully also we might see some of the bits I've requested in terms of implementation for the game we've got now, which is Demon's Tilt. Thanks again, and if you've got any questions, post them in the comments. All the best.